How many of you know Brother Timmy, or you knew Brother Timmy? Obviously, he has passed on. He told a story. He was sick for a long time, and we were at this thing, and he told this story. He said, he almost died a few times before he actually did, and he didn't have the 15-minute comeback like Brother Moses.
Terry, Lord have mercy, that's so irreverent.
I died for her. Got that check. What a marriage.
He has already done that. Done.
Yeah, we better turn that off.
No. Echo. And Brother Timmy said that he woke up and all of his family was around his bed, and all of his grandchildren was around the bed, and they were singing In the Sweet By and By. And Brother Timmy said he went, uh-oh. I was thinking, when we get biblical, it can get interesting. I mean, when we really start breaking down the Word of God and applying it to our life, it can get very interesting, especially in all of this business about marriage and family. It's just not God's will for us to have terrible relationships.
That's good.
It's not.
Well, then we're not living in God's will because we have one right this
A
minute.
terrible?
Just
Just
letting you know.
Well, it's because it's this evil spirit to my left. Since it, Brother Shoots, you're going to have to come here and do some spiritual warfare. Let's talk about the principle of roles.
Yes.
Yeah, we better.
The principles of roles.
We're supposed to take a break for pizza. Get a pizza order.
I thought we started at 2:45, and so
Sorry.
we was going to go to 3:45, take a break. No, that's okay. I just wanted to explain, because that's the way I give myself for you. I explain things. That felt good. Three's a charm. The principle of roles. According to the Word of God, the roles of the husband and wife differ from current view of society. Society considers marriage a contract, not a covenant.
That's good.
That's very important for us to understand, because as children of God, we must ask ourselves, are we in contract or covenant? A contract is an agreement between two individuals based on performance. The contract can easily be made void if someone does not live up to the end of their agreement. But a covenant is an agreement between husband, wife, and God, and it supersedes the law of the land, the opinion of family, or the opinion of friends. When we come in covenant, then that's between a contract could be, me and Melanie, but a covenant is me, Melanie, and God. Society's root system never produces godly marriages. People are going to have to be taught to quit listening to people who are just spouting off the attitudes of the day when it comes to marriage. I don't like hearing these generalities of, well, all men this and all women that, and we live in a world now that is really just at least it is in our part of the world, a man bashing world. Mm-hmm. All of this is anti-God. We anti-God, anti the Word. We have to be bold enough to live by these three words, defined by, forwards, the Word. Defined by the Word. We must operate the way the Word says for us to operate, and it doesn't matter what the world or people think. And when you start, when you align your life by the Word of God, you're going to be out of step with a lot of people. We're not going to be accepted in our way of thinking with a lot of people. Just, it's not going to be, because obviously it's not the popular way. The people of God must boldly reject society's lies and look to the Word of God. And in doing so, we can see that men and women have distinct roles and responses. A role and a response. There is a role that I have that will elicit a response from Melanie, and then the role that she has will elicit a response from me. And confusion reigns when we're not operating in our God-given roles and responding favorably to our spouse's role. Some very clear teaching that can make a major difference. God has a plan, and we must seek and find it, and then willingly align our lives accordingly. So let's start with the husband's role. Men, it starts with us. Our core role is of a husband is a servant leader. A servant leader. Now, a servant deals with humility, and leading the home with humility is very necessary, because it's our responsibility to lead in a manner that promotes an atmosphere dominated by the fruit of the Spirit. I was teaching this the last place that we taught it. I don't remember where it was, but one preacher came by and he said, "Do you realize how hard it is to live some of this stuff you're teaching?" And I said, yes, at times I do. But we cannot back off of living our lives the way the Word says for us to live it. This should be very common in our lives, very common. What does the Word say about it? What does the Word say about it? The reason why a lot of pastors, leaders, missionaries, whatever, people have to be trained to go to the Word before they come to you. There are a lot of pastors that are pastors and spouses getting just absolutely smashed. And it's a bunch of people that are calling 1-800-PASTOR, 1-800-LEADER, 1-800-MISSIONARY. They're not even praying about it. They're not even going to the Word about it. People have to be trained, go to the Word. What does the Word say about it? I think every counseling session ought to end up being just a mini Bible study. It's about the Word. What does the Word say? Go ahead. Did you have something?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that in the past, year, 10 months, 8 months, we did our first official LDI in November, so however long ago that was, last November. And we taught in every region of the world now. And everything we're teaching is the same. And the beauty of it is because it's the Word. Now, the resistance to it has been different. In every part of the world, the resistance has been different because of culture. And the resistance has even been different in the church. I mean, some of the ministers, there was one LDI we did, and there was a group right over there. Over there. Yeah, but that's what it meant. Yeah. Over there. Somewhere over in there.
Over there about the bananas.
Yes, they were just like, they sat there with their arms folded, glaring at us the entire time. They were not accepting it at all. We were teaching from the Word. But they were not, because their culture had showed them or taught them or given them permission to be a different way. One pastor in that culture actually had a wife at home dying. And he, if somebody else didn't come and take care of her feet or whatever, she didn't get care of our food. Because he didn't love her. Because it was an arranged marriage. So he had no responsibility toward it. And it's like, okay, well, your culture, I wanted to say, I didn't. Your culture arranged the marriage. Your culture, you don't love her. I hate that. But you are married to her, according to the Word. Now, how does the Word say you are to treat her? So, I mean, we should not try to adapt the Word to the culture. And try to say, well, okay, well, then let's just do it this way. Because your culture, that's what's happening in America too. It's all over the place. I think that's another example of the devil trying to twist the Word. Okay, you can use the Bible, just twist it around to fit us.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to throw in.
Okay.
Roles. Let's go to roles.
All right, roles. Talking about being a servant leader. Let's go to 1 Peter 3 and 7. We've already mentioned this earlier, but let's get back to it. We mentioned it during hindrances of prayer. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. When it speaks of honor, it's speaking of price is fixed. We fix the price. We fix the value. And we don't allow it to change. Colossians 3:19. Husbands, love your wives and be not bitter against them. And bitter there is speaking of exasperated, angry, or irritated. Now, men are prone. Aren't you glad your wife's not here, Brother Ross?
I just heard something. Irritated. Be not bitter. Irritated. Against. Ding, ding.
Two things.
Two dings.
You know,
Just say it, I heard.
if we can all sit there and say that might end up being a three-dinger before it's all over. Men are prone to anger, which leads to bitterness. Many men are prone to keeping things in and not dealing with them. And so the progression becomes anger, resentment, bitterness. So what we need to remember is that our wives were children of God before they were our wives. Now, we were children of God before we were their husbands also. But they were children of God. And when we're talking about being a servant leader, we need to remember the biblical example. When Jesus laid aside his garments, he took the towel and washed the feet of the disciples. Now, we have different cultures and nationalities represented in the church around the world, but we must remember we're back now to Christianity superseding culture. And we must show the church and the world a better way to live. Men, we must show the church and the world a better way to live. Jesus humbled himself. He being the leader, he served. Jesus served the people he lived with. That's what he did. He served the people that were closest to him. These were the ones that he served. And so in our case, men, we must lead by serving right at home where we are known best. I know different people do different things, and there's different, families. Some men more naturally do some things than others, and women do some things more naturally than others. And I realize this is not one size fits all, but we're talking about a principle. And I believe in the home, one 7-word question would change our homes if we would all ask it. And men, if we would start then maybe it would catch on. And that question is, what can I do to help you? What can I do to help you? Can you imagine what it would be like if the man would start asking that question? If the children were trained, that they would ask that question also. That everyone would be asking that question. Now, as we have people pointing back and forth, trying to get them to ask that question. It's harder at times to humble ourselves and serve those that we know best because we know them best. It's interesting it's interesting whose feet Jesus washed and where it was done. It was not at the synagogue. It was not at the temple. It was with the people that he lived with. And if we will serve our families, it will change the atmosphere of our homes. And if serving did not weaken Jesus, it certainly will not weaken us. We must be servant leaders, men. And we must be like Christ, not in word only, but in deed. We need to take up the towel and serve. And we serve in many different ways. But serving, that must be what we are. We must be servants. And again, last night I said, and I say it again, and we'll close this segment, take a break. But I say it again, what we are at home.
Yes.
Should I be serving other people more than her? Should I be serving other people more than my children? Mm-hmm. Should I be more concerned about anybody else anywhere than the people inside my house? The same with her. That should be her concern. It starts at home.
Yes.
And men that will, I've often said the problem is many of us are not big enough to become small enough to be used by God. And if we could come into our homes and become a servant at home. I'm not saying do everything for everybody, but at the same time, I do think that one statement could sum up a lot of homes, and that's one worn out woman.
Yeah.
And it's got to change. We'll talk about equipping children a little bit later. But men, the first role is a servant leader. It starts with us. And when we go inside, can you imagine what it would be like if we would be servant leaders inside our house and we would train the men of the church to be servant leaders starting at home? It would change things because there are definite roles, and Jesus Christ set that example. He was a servant leader. Amen? Any comments? Any comments so far?
Without this, you cannot be a soul winner.
What's that?
Without this, you cannot be a soul winner.
No, you sure can't. We serve people to Jesus. You can't demand them. You can't demand people, order people to Jesus. We serve people to Jesus. That's what we do. Okay, let's take 15.